Hey guys, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we're in the sewing room and we're getting ready to sew up a new block that I just finished designing. And as you know, we've been working on the Tilda blocks for Dear Santa, and we've made the Santa and the Christmas tree. Well, there was something I felt was missing. So I decided to design a Mrs. Claus block that was inspired by Tilda's Santa. And so here is the block that I have designed. I hope you like it as much as I do. So if you're interested in making this quilt block, stick around. Thanks for sticking around. Well, like I said, here is the block we're going to be making today. Now, this is a block that I designed, and it was inspired from the blocks that we have been making. Remember, we have been making the Santa Claus and the Christmas tree quilt blocks, and those are both free patterns from Tilda Fabrics. I think her site's called Tilda's World. So you can go there and download the patterns for these. I have done videos on both of these blocks, and this Santa Claus can be quite difficult because all of the pieces in the pattern are kind of scattered. But I have simplified it by making some little downloadables that will make it much easier, and you'll have what cuts you need for each fabric and also a letter tile to go along with those cuts, and it makes it so easy. Once you get it cut, this block is not hard to make at all. It's really quite forgiving because she doesn't have a lot of points that match up, not a lot of seams that line up. So it's really not a bad piece to make, just a lot of little pieces. But if you've made these two and you're wanting to add a Mrs. Claus to it, here is a Mrs. Claus that I've designed, and I think it goes very nicely. It's well proportioned, I think, and I think it will look really good together. In the original pattern, the block has a little dollhouse right here, so there's 3 blocks put together to make one big block. And I have changed that because I didn't want to put the little dollhouse in. I was either going to do something with these two and just, do like a wall hanging or something. But then I started thinking, and these are really nice sizes for stockings. So I think I'm going to turn my blocks into stockings. And so I knew that I have Mr. Claus, which is Andy, my husband, and then my sons could either get trees, or there's another free pattern for an actual stocking, which is about the same size as these blocks, and it's a bird and it's got leaves and stuff, and it's really cute. So I think I might be able to make one stocking like the pattern that she has. So I'd have these two and that stocking, but then I needed a stocking for myself, and so I thought Mrs. Claus would be perfect. So I've got this one, which is my practice block made, but the one that I'm making today will be the one that I'll be turning into my stocking. So let me share with you what we've got here. In the description box below, you are going to find this PDF download, and it is the cutting directions for this block right here. And if you have been following me and have received these free patterns before, you know that I do not put the instructions on how to piece the blocks together because I'm not a pattern writer and it takes way too much time to do. This right here takes a lot of time in itself, but it also helps me, so I'm glad that I can make this and share it with you. So what you're going to find is you're going to find that I have a column here that has the different fabrics. And when I mean fabrics, it means like the background fabric, the tree branch fabric, this right here, the tree trunk fabric. Whoops, these are the tree branches, the tree trunk, the tree stand fabric. And so you have the coat fabric, you have the dress fabric, and so forth. So I've got all of that labeled because that normally would be one fabric. Then I have the cut size and how many you need of that cut size. And then I have a letter, which is the label for those cuts. And I'll just bring it up a little closer here. And as you can see, this is the way my patterns are made, and they're laid out, I feel, pretty nicely. It does take a little bit of time to cut all these little pieces, but I think it is well worth it. In fact, I really enjoyed piecing this block. The cutting of the fabric takes probably longer than anything, but you will see there are a lot of pieces. Now I do have on this next page here, I have the sawtooth star, which is this right here, and that can be optional. If you don't want the star and you just want to put fabric there, just run this piece all the way across and you can measure it and cut it the size you need. But this is the cut sizes for the sawtooth star that you'll just make and then you'll put in right there. I also have some notes right here, and I have some half square triangles and some quarter square triangles in this block. And so I put the fabrics that you're going to be putting together, and they have little asterisks by them in the cutting directions. And then I tell you what you need to make sure they measure when you finish. Most of them you'll have to probably trim down. So that is right there. And so that's there. Then of course I have a diagram that shows where all of the pieces go. And that is this one right here. So it is the layout of all of those lettered pieces. Now in order to letter all of these, I did also make some alphabet labels or tiles. And so I have this sheet right here that goes all the way to Z, and then it's got AA to DD. And then because you're going to need more for this, I went ahead and extended it all the way to ZZ. And then we have some blank ones down here that you can write on if you need to. There is only one fabric cut that has a that is labeled with, that doesn't have one here. So you are going to need a W and a W2. I was making one of the blocks, and I think it is the quarter square triangle, and I needed one more piece, and that one's going to have W2 on it. So you can just write on those and mark those. If you laminate them and you use permanent marker, use that, and then just use alcohol to wipe it away. That works fine too. So these right here are in the description box. They are free. I put mine on cardstock and then laminate them and then cut them apart, so they last pretty much forever for me. But that's those. Then I also have the fabric cuts. You remember I talked about fabric background, tree trunk fabric. So each of those fabrics, I have a label, because whenever I lay them all out on my design board, I want to make sure that they're all kept together. So these are all the cuts for the tree branches, and they're all labeled. And then I've got the tree branch fabric label on top, so I know what that is. And so these are going to be really easy to find the pieces that I need when I need them. And of course we have a lot of background fabric, so I went ahead and did one board with just the background fabric. And so that is there, and then this is my sawtooth star. So I'm going to keep this real handy right here because we are going to be taking fabric from that as we go. So let me put these aside, and remember, check the description box below this video. You may need to click on the word more, and then if you're on a phone, it sometimes has another more that you need to click on again just to open up that window full. And a lot of times you're going to have to scroll all the way down. There's a lot of stuff in there. So just open up that description box, and it's going to have everything that you need to know or need for this project. So whenever you're putting together a block like this, we are going to figure out what pieces we can put together and then what group of pieces we can then sew together. So sometimes you can go across, sometimes you can go up and down, sometimes you have to build out from the center. This one is pretty good at going across, and there's a few that will change once we get down here. But when I'm making this, what I would do is I would have this as a section up here. So there's a strip A, we have our sawtooth star, and we have a piece of fabric B. Those three can be put together. Then we can put C, this head, and E together. So there's that. We can then put the background, this arm, her body, and this arm together. And then we can put all of this right here together. Now we can go up and break this down even more. So on this one, of course, you'd put, if you're adding the sawtooth star, you'd build that first, and then you'd add the side pieces. For the head, you'd start with the middle piece, and then you just work out, and then you'd add your two side pieces, and you'd get that. At that point, you could sew those two together if you'd like. On this piece, you would probably work from the center right here, get this all set and put together. Then you'll get these two arms attached, and then add your background fabric. Then once this is all put together, you can attach it to this. Over here, we're going to do the tree. So we'll draw a line right there. That tree can be put together on its own. Now, if for some reason you don't want to put the tree in, you can modify it, but you'll just need to remember to be sure you get that piece of coat in there. But you could just use background fabric there. And then we could keep that separate. Then we could just, again, let's see, I think then you'd want to do this section here, and then this section, and then you'd attach. For these, you would just put them together like that. So what I like to do is I like to start right now with the face. That's where I started with this one. And so I'm just going to do this section right here first. So I'm going to need X, Z, Z, and I'm also going to need CC and CC. Now the Z is in white, so I know that that is my hair fabric, and then the face fabric, and then CC is my coat fabric. So let me grab those and I'll bring you right back. Okay, I have all of my pieces, and I am going to take my face fabric X and my two squares that are going to be snowballing the face, and these are Z, or just Z. These are the hair fabric, and I'm going to lay them right in the corners, the top corners, just like we have over here. And I'm going to draw diagonal lines through each block, corner to corner. And I did starch all of my fabric before beginning this because this is small pieces, and we do have some really small pieces. We have, I think, 2 3/4 inch or 4 3/4 inch square blocks. So when you starch them before you cut, it makes the fabrics much easier to sew without them stretching, and you just get a more precise block. And so I suggest that you do that. I do have a lot of people asking me about how I starch, and I will probably need to do a video on that because I have people really wanting to know how to do that. So that may be coming up before too long. So I've got my 2 diagonal lines right here. Now I'm just going to go to the sewing machine and sew on each of those lines, and I'll bring you right back. And so there we have it. All I've done is I've just pressed those back, and they cover those back corners. And then what I'll do is I will just trim those 1/4 inch away from that seam line right there. And we have the hair added to the face. Now we're going to take the CCs, and this is the coat fabric, and these are just, I believe these are 1 inch squares. Yes, they are. And you're going to have an extra one that you need somewhere else, so just put those back on your board. And we're going to put right sides together. If I can get them apart. And put them in the corners just like we did with the hair blocks. Do the same thing, draw diagonals. Be sure your lines are accurate. And a hint that I've said many times, especially when you're doing these small blocks, when you stitch, if you stitch a thread's length or stitch right next to that line on the outside corner, you're going to get better results. So I'm going to take these and go ahead and stitch them. Another hint would be to put a little bit of glue back here and just a glue stick, and I'll show you with a glue stick. You can just take a glue stick or some Elmer's glue and just put a little bit of glue in that corner because that's going to be trimmed off, and do the same over here. When you have these really small ones, it's hard to get a pin in where it's not in your way when you're sewing, so the glue trick helps. So I'm going to go ahead and sew both of these right outside the line. And there we have those sewn and ironed back. So let's just cut 1/4 inch away. And we have the face portion finished. It's going to go like that. Now we're going to take and build out of that. So we're going to need AA, BB, 2 BBs. Now you're going to have 2 other BBs, so just keep those with the tag and put them back on your board. And let's see what we need to do here. So we need to put BBs on both sides of the face block that we have, just like this. So you just turn it over and do right sides together, pin if you need to. I suggest new sewers do so, and then just sew 1/4 inch away on this side, and the same thing over here, 1/4 inch away from the edge on this side. Okay, we have our side pieces on, and I press toward the outside pieces. Now we need to sew on our AA. Now before we sew on AA, we do need to add something to it. We have these 2 corner squares right here, and those are D and D, and we're going to add them before we add it to the face. So we're going to put this square right here and this square right here. And then of course we're going to draw those diagonal lines, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to sew directly on the lines, and then we're going to flip them back and press them. And so I will do that. Remember, if you need to use a little glue in the corners, feel free to do so. And I will bring you right back. And there we have them pressed back, and just trim them down. Now, if you add AA to the face block before you add your snowballed corners here, they will not work. DDs will be too big. So you want to add them at this time, and then sew it to your head block. So we're going to put right sides together and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away from the edge. And here we have our E block, which is going to go right here, and our C block, which is going to go right here. And now all we need to do is sew this one 1/4 inch away and this one a 1/4 inch away. So there it is, all sewn together, and then I press toward the background. So we have this first section right here completed. So let me just set that aside. I think I'm going to work on down to this next section here, and I'm going to start with this section, her chest area, and I think I'm just going to go across and do these rows right here, and that should do a pretty good job of getting all of those blocks. So we're going to take 2 BBs and 2 Ys. So the BB is from the coat fabric, and there's 2 of them right there. And the YY is, or the Ys are both from the face fabric, even though that would be more of her neck area. And all we're going to do is put the Y blocks on the interior of the BB blocks. And I would make sure you go ahead and lay them like this so you know which angles you're going to be needing. So go ahead and lay them like they are in the pattern. And then we're going to put our diagonal lines going opposite directions. This one here, and then we're going to go this way on this one. And again, if you need a little glue, we will just put it on the outside corner and the outside corner. And I'm going to take these and stitch on the line. And there are my 2 pieces right there, all stitched up. Now I do want to share with you, when you are sewing small pieces, I would shorten the length of your stitches. That way you'll have more stitches going across. If you only have a few because your stitches are wider and the length is longer, then it will be easy to pull them out. So I would recommend shortening up your stitch length for small pieces. And then another thing is, when you're feeding these small pieces through, a stiletto is really handy, and it keeps your fingers from getting under your needle, and it helps keep that seam line nice and straight. So a stiletto of some sort, or even your seam ripper, is very helpful with that. Now I've gone ahead and I've pressed one of these up toward the background and one of these toward the coat fabric. And so when I put them together like this, we are going to have nesting seams. This back piece has a seam that's going this direction. This front piece has a seam that's going this direction. And when we put them together, they just lock in place with that seam right on top of the other seam. And that's what we want. That way we'll have a nice intersection there, and it'll be a nice point. So I do pin when I'm having seams intersect. So I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and stitch a 1/4 inch away from that edge. And there we have those 2 pieces sewn together, and I just press the seam allowance open. That way it lies nice and flat. So we've got that piece. So I'm going to set it right here. Now we're going underneath it here, and we're going to need EE, GG, FF, and VV. All right, so this piece right here is our bow fabric, and that is our VV. This piece right here is our bow fabric, or it's actually our coat fabric, but when we put it together, we're going to be making our bow. And these 2 are the same size, so we're going to lay them right sides together. And we're going to draw a diagonal, and here is one of those half square triangles that we talked about. So I'm going to draw a line right here, corner to corner. Now this time I'm not going to be sewing directly on the line. This time I am going to be sewing a 1/4 inch on both sides. So I am going to put these pins in first, And so I'm going to go and sew a 1/4 inch away from the line on this side and a 1/4 inch away from the line on this side, and I'll bring you right back. This has been sewn on both sides. Now with our scissors or our rotary cutter, we can cut right down on that line that we drew, just like that. And we can open these up, and let's see what size they are. Right now they are between 2.5 and 2 3/4, it looks like. So let's see what size we need them to be. So this is FF and VV. And remember, I showed you at the bottom of the sawtooth star cutting instructions that we had directions there. So it says you need to have 2 at 1.5 inch square unfinished. So we have some cutting down to do. When they're finished, they'll be an inch. Once they're sewn in, they'll be an inch, but right now they need to be 1.5 inches. Now, when I'm trimming my half square triangles, this is what I usually use, and I really like this ruler. Just put it on a piece of white paper here. And it's the Quilt in a Day 6.5 inch triangle square up ruler. And this works really nice. There are newer ones that have the slots in them that you can cut the dog ears off. And there is a smaller one that I think goes up to 4.5. And then there's a larger one that goes up to about 9, I believe. So there's several of these, and they're all really nice. I got this many years ago, and I love this one. It really does all the sizes that I need. It goes from basically, you could do a 1/2 inch half square triangle or a 1/4 inch half square triangle if that was possible, all the way up to a 6.5 inch. So what I'm going to do is I can use this and I can put this on here. Now I need 1.5 inches. So I'd put this 1.5 inch line directly on my stitch line right there. And then I'd have this extra hangover here that I would just trim off. But not everybody has this ruler, so I'm going to show you how to do it with just a regular square ruler. Any size square ruler, as long as it's the same size or bigger. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take and I'm going to finger press. You can go ahead and press with your iron too, but I'll just do a finger press since we're right here. And I'm going to lay it like this. Now, any square ruler that has this diagonal line you can use. So I'm going to take my 1 and my 1 end right here, and I'm going to put it in the upper right-hand corner, and I'm going to put it the diagonal line right on that seam line. Now, right now, it's telling me that this is about 1 5/8 inches, and we need 1.5 inches. So I need to slide either this ruler down and then keep the edges that I have, and those edges are pretty straight. So I can go ahead and keep this edge here and this edge here and just line them up on the 1.5 inch line. And then I can trim off this. And I think I'm just going to do that one. So if I trim that and I trim that, we now have a 1.5 inch square block, or a 1.5 inch half square triangle. So there's that one. Okay, let me do this one for you. So I'm just going to press it so that that seam is nice and flat. Lay it on my board. Lay this diagonal line right here, right on top. At this point, this triangle is 1 5/8 inches. I can slide it to 1.5 inches, and if these two edges are straight, and they are, and they're nice and square, I can just use those edges, and I'll just cut on these two sides. So I can just trim that up right there and right there. And now I have a 1.5 inch half square triangle. And just cut that dog ear off. So there we have it right there. So what we need to do is we need to put F and F together in the middle. And that is the coat fabric. And they're going to go like this. And then we're going to take GG, and GG should match up right here. GG is actually a rectangle. If you try putting it this way, it is going to be too short. So make sure you have it the right way. And then EE is actually a rectangle too. So make sure you have it going the right way. If you try the other way, it's too big. So be sure you get them laid the correct way. And then we're going to just put right sides together for all of these pieces, and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away from each of the edges. I think I'm just going to start by doing these two right here, and then I'll come back and also the two together. Now I'm bringing you back for just a second. Before I sew these together, I was sure to press my half square triangle, one toward the red fabric or the coat fabric and one toward the bow fabric. That way when we place these together, right sides together, that's going to again nest real nicely, and we're going to get a nice point right there. So put a pin in it, and it's ready to sew. And there we have it. Now I did open up that middle seam, and the others I pressed toward the coat fabric. None of these seams are going to be meeting another seam, so they're not going to be intersecting, so that'll be nice. So this is going to go right here. Now you can see when I did this pattern, I intentionally did this. I intentionally moved this bow over because I just did not want to have to worry about matching up all of those points there. So this is going to be a little bit, the bow is going to be a little bit to the right, and that's going to work out real nicely. So now we've got those two sections done. Let's take a look at what we have. We need the gift SS, and that is this fabric right here, and there's no sewing involved there. Then we need UUT and QQ, and I should have said TT, not T. TT for the little tiny squares for the gift. So we have, it looks like 4 of those, and our QQ is our fur trim on our jacket or mittens, and then our UU is our mittens fabric. So I'm just going to lay this out like that shows. And remember, these all should be the same height. So if you've turned them the wrong way, they're not going to match up. Okay, there's what we have. Now these little TTs, these are the smallest blocks. They are 3/4 inch squares. They are going to go in each of the 2 corners of the tip of the mitten on both sides, and they should perfectly fit right on that mitten. They shouldn't overlap. And all we need to do is get our little ruler, and I think I'm going to go ahead, because these are so small, go ahead and put a little glue on these. And if you just put it in the corners, that gets cut off. Now, if you want to press to dry it, do that before you use a friction pin, because if you press after using a friction pin, it will just erase your lines and you'll have to do it again. Okay. These should dry by the time I'm over there. Then we're going to take our straight edge and our friction pin and draw corner to corner and corner to corner. And we'll do that on both of them, and then I'll take them to the sewing machine and sew on those lines, or a thread's distance from the line going toward the outer corner. I think I'm going to have to do that other line right here again. That one moved. And there we have the mittens with their snowballed corners. like that. Now we just need to sew these two and right sides together, these two 1/4 inch away, and then we're going to need to sew these two. Now before we do, we are going to press these a different direction, and so I want to press one of them toward the mitten like that, and then one of them toward those corner squares. Okay, that way when we put them together, they're going to nest. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to match those two up and make sure I get that point right on that point right there, and sew them 1/4 inch away. And here we have this piece, and if you were able to match up your points, it will look just like that. And if they don't get matched up, it's no big deal. Her hands don't have to be meeting perfectly in the middle like that. It's fine. So we have now that piece right there as well. It looks like we have all the pieces we need now to make this section right here on her chest. So I'm just going to put these two together, and now this one right here, remember, does not meet at that seam, so don't try to make them meet. And we're going to pull a pin right here. Now if you have one that's longer than the other, it's okay, but still match up your corners just like I'm doing here. And then whichever side is looser will go toward your feed dogs. And it looks like this side right here is just a little bit looser, not a whole lot. I can just gently pull on it and it will tighten up. But none of those seams match, so don't try to make them match. I am just going to put a pin right here in the middle to keep my edges from slipping down and the seam getting shortened. So I will sew that one 1/4 inch, and while I'm there, I'm going to go ahead and do this one. Same thing, right sides together, match up your edges and those corners. Even if one seems to be a little bit longer than the other, go ahead and match up those edges. Then if one is, that side goes toward the feed dogs. So this side right here is going to go toward the feed dogs. I am going to go ahead and put a pin right in the middle to keep those edges together. Okay, I'll bring you back when I've got these two stitched. And on this one, I press toward the package fabric. And on this one, I didn't open up the seam. This right here, this point right here is a pretty thick one with all the stuff coming together there, all those fabrics coming together. So I pressed that one down. You can also press open, but I think it actually worked better pressing down. So now we're going to match these two up, right sides together, and again pin and then sew. So I'll be back after I have this one done. And there we have this part done. So right there is done. And now we'll move on to the next part. So now we need to get these two pieces that go on the left and the right of this middle piece. And these two sections are mirror images of each other. They're the same thing, only they're flipped. So what we're going to do is start right here with this half square triangle. We're going to do a half square triangle with G and DD. And I've got those fabrics right here. And let's see how big this has to turn out. We need it to be, when finished, right here again, G and DD, it needs to be unfinished 2.5 inches, but once it's sewn into the project, it'll be 2 inches. So we'll trim it down to 2.5 if it needs to be trimmed down. So remember, when we do half square triangles, we just put our squares on top of each other, right sides together. We take our straight edge, and we go corner to corner. Now remember, we're going to sew 1/4 inch along this side and 1/4 inch away on this side. And again, you can put pins in if you need to, and I advise that for new and beginning quilters. And here we have it sewn on both sides of the line. We cut right on that line. And then we open them up, and you can press them if you'd like. Again, you can use whatever your favorite method is for trimming down half square triangles, but I will once again just use my square ruler and my mat so that everyone can just use what you have available to you. So I've got it nicely pressed, no pleats in that seam. Now I lay my ruler, ones and ones, up in the right-hand corner, top right-hand corner. I lay it on here. At this point, this is measuring 2 3/4, and we said we needed 2 1/2. So I can see, first of all, if these edges, I want to see if these edges right here are square, and if they are, I'll just keep those edges. Let's see. So I line them up on my 2 1/2 inch line, right there and right there. I also line up my line on my ruler with my seam line. And it looks like I can probably trim a little of this red off over here. So I'm going to go ahead and just scoot this up, and I'll trim on both sides. So I just kind of make sure I have a little bit of fabric on all sides past the 2 1/2 inch mark. And so then I'll just trim, trim. I need to change my rotary blade. Probably need to do that here in just a second. Then 2 1/2 and 2 1/2 right here. Whoops. Make sure you get the 2 1/2 and 2 1/2 down here, and then just trim away that excess. And I'm sorry about the glare. I see that you have some glare on that ruler. And there we have a perfect 2 1/2 inch square. Now we also have another one, and we can do the same thing with that other one. I think I just covered it up here. So just repeat these steps. And on these, it does not matter which way you press your seam allowance. It looks like nothing is going to be actually matching up there. So whichever way you want to do it. Again, lay it so that the line, your seam line, is going diagonal. The ones and the ones up here are in the upper right hand corner. I'm going to check and see if this is on 2 1/2 here. I think this one will work. I'm going to go ahead and just trim 2 sides on this one. So these are on the 2 1/2 inch line, I believe. Hold on. And this triangle is not quite as big as the other one. We're not going to have quite as much fabric trimmed off. And then we can cut the dog ear off right there. Let me see if that's right. Yep, that's right. They just were a little bit off. My seam line was just a little different. Okay, we've got those 2 done. Now we're going to move this out of the way for you. Now we're going to take M, and we have 2 of them because we're doing 2 blocks at a time. And we are going to put H, and D in opposite corners. So on the one that's on the left, this one over here, we're going to put D in the bottom left corner, and the one that's on the right on the bottom right corner. And I suggest you lay them out just like this when you're doing it. It's so easy to get them confused. We do have 2 D's left, so they're going to go back on the board. Then we have our HH's, and right sides together, we're going to put those. This one's going to go in the upper right-hand corner, and this one's going to go in the upper left-hand corner, just like that. So they are mirror images of each other. Now this one is a good one for a little bit of glue. So put a little glue in that corner, a little glue in this corner. And again, if you want to hit this with heat, do that before you use your friction pin or any marking pin, because a lot of times the marking pins are set when you hit them with heat. So don't mark if you're going to hit it with heat. Do that after. Okay, so we've got those two on there. Then we're going to do an angle like this and like that and like this and this. Now I just need to take these to my sewing machine and just sew directly on those lines, or a thread's thickness, or right next to this line toward the outside corners. Okay, I've got both of them sewn up. I also trimmed the back corners off and I pressed. Now on these, we're going to have a seam meet with the block below. And so I decided I would press both of the seams going toward, oh, let's see here, HH it looks like. So both of them going up toward that HH corner, just like that. And I think that will help those nest. Okay, so we've got those two, and let's put them in correctly here. Let's see, right there and right here. And I think I'm gonna switch these because I kind of want this flower. No, I think I want that flower. Sometimes when you're looking at your fabric, you need to think about what's going next to it. And this is a light right here. And we are going to be putting the cuff, and maybe this right here will match better with that cuff. That way we can see the change in it. And the same here. So let me see if I've got that right. Yes, I do. Okay, so these two are going to go like that. And then we're going to attach our half square triangles now. And we need to have the coat fabric on the bottom there, just like that. And I believe that is right. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put right sides together, and I'm going to go to the sewing machine and sew a 1/4 inch away from this edge. Okay, I have those two sewn together, and I did press toward the half square triangles because neither of those have a seam that matches. So now we're going to be placing these two next to the body portion here. And on this one, we are going to have a seam that matches up. So we're going to match the corner here and match the corner here. And hopefully if the corners both match up, that spot where the seams intersect will be perfect. And it's right here. Now we have a diagonal seam here. We have a straight up and down seam here. So when you look at it, you don't want to match those seams up right here. You want to match them up a 1/4 inch away from that edge, because that's where we're going to see that point. So from your fabric here, I'm just going to estimate, and you can get a ruler out and take it down a 1/4 inch. And I think this stitch right here is a 1/4 inch away. So when I flip it over, let me do it again. Go straight down, right there. And when I flip it over, it is right on that seam there too. So that is matching up, and so I'll just put a pin right there. And now this one's ready to sew a 1/4 inch away. That's the only seam that we needed to match. Let's do the same with this one. Flip it so it's right sides together. Match our corners. And then find those two. This time they're over here. I'm going to put a pin 1/4 inch down from the edge, straight down, and this is where it intersects that seam. Turn it over, and that looks close enough to me, and we're ready to sew. So on both sides, 1/4 inch away. And let's see how we did. Right there is where we met, and it looks good. And this one looks good too. There we go. So we're set. Now on this, it looks like I would either press this way. I think I'm going to open up my seams on this one. So we're going to press with the seams open, okay? But before we do, let's go ahead and add this one last piece. We have F right here, and that is a background piece. So we're just going to put right sides together, match our edges, and then sew a 1/4 inch away from that edge. And there we have that piece all sewn in, and now we have the whole section, and it's going to go right here with this piece, but we'll wait just a few minutes to sew those together. Let's go ahead and start working on the next section. I think we're going to work on the tree next, because that one has a lot of little blocks. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna lay it all out right here first. Okay, so I have all the pieces that I need, and we are just going to build it right here on our mat. And I don't think anybody is going to have any problem building this, so I think I'll do this and then bring you back. All right, just lay your tree out like I have done here. Just follow the pieces, kind of like doing a puzzle. And once you have it laid out, it's going to be easy. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be sewing in strips. So I'll take this to my sewing machine and I'll sew these 3 pieces together. Then I'll sew these 3 and so forth until I get all of these strips. So I'm going to do that and then I'll bring you back. Okay, so I have all my pieces and strips sewn together. And I will tell you an easy way to do that, and the way I did it was I just went to my sewing machine and I had this board and I just sewed all of the seams, the background, the branches, the background, the tree trunk, the background, the branches, and so forth on one side. Then I cut that string off the back of my sewing machine and I laid it out and I trimmed it so that I trimmed the thread between each block, and then I just sewed this block to that strip, and that went really, really fast. So if you need a way of chain piecing, that made that much easier than sewing one side and then sewing the other and then sewing one side, sewing the other. You can just speed it right through your machine. Now, the other thing that I really recommend, like I said at the beginning, is these are small pieces and it makes a big difference if your fabric is starched or if your fabric is not. When it's starched, it goes and pieces together so nicely and you don't have to really necessarily pin because it holds together so well. So if you are not sure whether to starch, I highly recommend starching before you cut your fabric. The other thing you might notice that I have 3 of these already stitched together, and that is because we need to add a block to it before we stitch the rest of them. We could go ahead and stitch all of these together, that would be fine, but I'm going to go ahead and stitch together another block with it. You can see it's a little shorter than the others, and so what we need is we need piece I and M, and that is this one. And then there's quite a few M's, so we'll just take one of the M's. And they're just small squares. I think those are 1-inch squares. And we're just going to make a snowballed corner or a flip and stitch corner right here. So I'm going to put a little glue right there. And I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I am going to sew right on this diagonal line. That was the wrong pin. This is the pin I need. It really wouldn't have mattered. This is going to be in the seam line anyway. Okay, so I'm just going to stitch right on that line and I'll bring it back. And there I have it. I've already pressed my seam allowance back and we are good. So this piece right here is going to attach to these 3 blocks. And when you press these 3 blocks, you can choose the way you press them. There's so many seams, but just make sure you don't have any pleats in them. I'm just going to press mine, I think, in one direction when I'm done, and I think that will be fine. I think on my original one, I pressed toward the branch fabric like that, and that worked out well too because they just meet right there in the middle. But I think on this one, I'll just press in one direction. So I'm going to take this, make sure I've got it the right direction, and put this piece right here, matching right sides together. And then I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch away from the edge. And there we have that piece. It's all set. Now I just need to take these, and I think I'm just going to put right sides together like this. And I think I will start off by sewing a 1/4 inch away from that top edge, then opening those up and then attaching them together, and then keep going until we have the one big Christmas tree. Okay, guys. I am sharing this with you because you need to know that I make mistakes all the time too. So what I did was I put this on the wrong side. This needs to go over here. And so what I need to do is take the stitches out here. So I need to rip this out and then rip this out, put this on this side, and then I can stitch it back together. So maybe me making this mistake will help you catch it. This arm right here should go on, I guess it's her coat. This coat should go on the shorter side here. I didn't catch that. And I can even show you how I do this. So all I'm doing is I am just taking out like every 4 or 5, every 4th or 5th stitch. And then, you know, of course, our stitches are smaller since this is a smaller block. This one. Oh, and I ran out of thread on this one too, so that didn't help. I had to overlap a row of stitches here at the beginning. So let's see. This one over here is where I have 2 rows, so we might have to do that one a little differently. So then I just take and real carefully pop those out, and if there's resistance, then I will go back over here and pull another stitch. Okay, so this is where I had the double stitching here, so I'm just going to take my, and I can do it this way, take my ripper and just stick it right in there, and just try not to cut your fabric. And once we put a little water and press this, it should flatten out and those holes should not be seen. Okay, and then one side will have a whole strip of thread. Take that out, and then if you have any little threads, here's a seam ripper that has the rubber end on it that will pull those out. And I forgot what brand this one is. Okay, so then we got to take this coat fabric off too. And this is just a short section, so it's no big deal. It's just a headache when you've sewn it all together already and thought you were done. So just that. Just gently. Don't want to tear your fabric or anything. There we go. There we go. And this one has the piece of thread in the back, all one piece. Okay, I'm going to press those and I'm going to sew those on correctly this time, I hope. And there we have the tree. And I think it looks really good. Now what we need to do is make the planter part, or the tree stand. And so for that, let's pull out our directions here. We are going to need, and I can zoom you down just a little closer. We are going to need V, W, and O. Okay, so now this is a little different. I have 3 pieces of fabrics that are squares. One is this light piece right here at the top, this triangle here. The other 2 will be used, these 2 right here, for this portion, okay? So we're gonna make a 1/4 square triangle block. And to do that, we're going to take this V and this W, since they're the same size, place them right sides together. We are going to go ahead and draw our line from corner to corner. And we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away from both of those sides. And if you need to pin, please do. So I have that sewn a 1/4 inch away from that line on both sides, and I am just going to carefully cut. And you're only going to need one of these squares, so I'll put the other one over there, and this is the one we'll use. So let's open it up. We have a 1/2 square triangle, and we can finger press it. Now it needs to match this one, and it's pretty close. I think I'm just going to call it good. And we're going to put it, this one right here, centered right in the middle of it. And I want the points to go right on that diagonal line, and this one, if yours is a little bit smaller than this piece. And so that's the way we're doing it. Now my seam underneath there is this way. I'm going to draw a line going the opposite direction. So I want to put a seam going this way. So again, I'm just going to make sure that this point right here is on that diagonal if it's not fitting the block perfectly. And you certainly could trim this block down underneath here if you need to, but it's okay. It's pretty forgiving. And I'll put a pin there, and I'll put a pin over here. Now I'm going to go back and sew a 1/4 inch away from both sides of that line again. Okay, I have my line here, and I want to go over here real quick before we cut and check to see what size our 1/4 square triangle needs to be. So on this one, our 1/4 square triangle needs to finish up, and we should have 2 of them at 4 inches. Now we're only going to be, I believe, using one of these. Yes, we're only going to be using one of them, but you'll have another one for whatever you'd like to use it for. So it should be 4 inches. So let's go ahead and cut on that drawn line. And let's remove our pins. And let's see what we have. Finger press. We have a little more than 4 inches, so we'll trim this one down. So I'm just going to pick a diagonal, and I'll just use this one. Now this one I have to trim all 4 sides because it is a 1/4 square triangle. So I need to watch so that this angle right here is going to hit at 4 because that's how big I want it. So I'm going to lay this where I think it needs to be, and it's actually going to be 2 inches right there for the center. So that's what I'm going to be watching. So this right here should be at 2 inches because this side needs to be 2 inches since this is a 4-inch square. So be sure your line is on that and that it comes to the 2. Then we'll trim the top and the bottom, or the side. just like that. Then we'll take this corner at the top right and put it at the bottom left, and we'll lay our ruler back down. Now this side can be on the 4-inch, this side can be on the 4-inch, and when you do that, that point should be at the 2-inch, and it is. And all of our lines, our points are matching at 4. And we'll just trim that off like that. So there's our 1/4 square triangle, and it's also our tree stand, and it's going to go like this. So I just have this up here. So I'm going to flip that back, and I'm going to go and sew a 1/4 inch away from that edge. And there we have our tree stand with our tree in it. And now we've got 2 O's, and these are our last 2 O's. And these need to go in the bottom corners. And that's just going to round the bottom of this tree stand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little Elmer's glue, put it here, put it here, then we're going to draw our diagonals. We'll draw one right here, and we'll draw one right here. And then I'll go to the sewing machine and stitch right on those lines. And just trim off those corners, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I've got them pressed. So there is our tree unit right there. Okay, so we are getting through, we've got 3 units done. Let's put that one up there. And now let's work on this unit here. So I'm just going to start at the top. I'm going to start with JJ, and I'm going to get KK and NN. So we have JJ, and it is just a rectangular piece that doesn't have anything on it. Then we have our KK and our NN, and they are both squares. And so we're going to put right sides together, and we are just going to draw a line down the diagonal, and we're going to make 2 half square triangles, just like we've done in the past. So 1/4 inch away from this line, 1/4 inch away from this line. And we've got our stitches sewn on the sides of that line. We'll cut right on that line. We now have 2 squares. We need to trim them down, I believe. So let me just go ahead and finger press them open. You can, again, trim them down your favorite method. I'll just use the basic method of using a square ruler. And let's see, these are going to need to be cut to, it's KK and NN. They're going to need to be cut 3-inch square for unfinished. So that's what we need, 3 inches. So let's lay this here. Let me flip this over since they're all red. We'll make it so it's easier to see. There we go. And our ruler, right now they are measuring just about 3 1/8, not much bigger. So let me see if I can just use the edges on the bottom and the left, and I believe I can. It looks like those are good. Those are nice and square. So I'm just going to trim off these 2 sides because I measured these on the 3-inch line. And all we need to do is just take off that dog ear right there, and we're good. Let's do the same thing with this one. Again, make sure you have that seam, no pleats in there. Have our 1 and our 1 at the top right corner. We have it following that line, that seam. And let's see, I'm going to see if this one has nice square corners here. And I believe it does. So we're just going to trim 2 sides. So this line is on the seam. These are both on 3 inches. Let's just trim and trim. and then take the dog ear off over here. And we have our 2 half square triangles. So now my fabric is quite close, the jacket fabric and the dress fabric. And I think there's probably a better jacket fabric that you can use that's a little easier, but I only had this red and one other red, and the other one had a lot of white in it, and I didn't want to use that for Mrs. Claus. But there were a couple of other fabrics in the collection that might be better choices. But this is what I had to choose from, and I think it looks fine. Just a little hard to determine which is the coat and which is the dress fabric. So it looks like we are going to need to have these 2 with KK in the middle. So the KK is the coat fabric, and so we'll put these right sides together. And I will be sure to sew on this side 1/4 inch away from the edge. And there we have those 2 pieces sewn together, and you can press either direction. It does not matter on this one. Okay, so we can sew these 2 together. I'm also going to get OO and PP. The P and the P are fur trim, and it's the same fabric that is the fur trim around the cuffs. So we will just take these, and so we can do a couple of things when I go to the sewing machine. So I'm going to sew these 2, whoops, let me back you up so you can see. Okay, so I'm going to sew these 2 together here, and I'm going to sew these 2 together. And then I'm going to take both of those 2 pieces and sew these 2 together. So when I bring you back, we'll have all 4 of these sewn together. And there we have those sections sewn together. Now there is a point right here. If you want to keep your point, just be sure when you're sewing this, you are staying above that point, and when you're stitching, and that will keep that point. If not, it's okay. Her coat may not come together in a perfect point. It's all right. That's one thing with these blocks that are like this, where they're actual things instead of, shapes. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now we're going to look down here at the boots, or the shoes, I guess, for her. And so what we have here is we have some D, RR, and M fabric. And here are those shoe blocks. Just need to trim off the back corners. And then what we'll do is we will just sew all 4 of these pieces together, and we will have this section here. Now when we sew this one right here, I should have pressed one of them going down, and I'll do that with my fingers. I didn't think of that when I was pressing. So one is going down and one is going up. That way they're going to nest nicely. And so when we sew this together, those 2 stitches, one's going this way, the seam allowance is going this way on this side, will match, and they're going to nest real nicely. And I'll just put a pin right there, and I will sew those so that those seams will meet. Then I'll add the 2 outside pieces to the shoes. And there we have the shoe block right there. It is all finished. We can now attach it to this. And when you're pressing these, I just press toward the background here, and in the middle, I just opened up that seam. So let's do right sides together, and then we'll pin on both sides like usual. Sometimes I'm not showing you that, but I hope you guys are just doing that, especially if you are a beginning quilter or sewer. And on this one, I'll go ahead and show you again. If they don't match up, go ahead and match them, make a match, and then put whatever side's loose toward your feed dogs at the bottom of your sewing machine. So that one matches pretty good. So I'll be right back. And that section is done as well. So we are just moving right along. Let's go ahead and get this side section over here. We need H, D, CC, and LL. Okay, I got all my pieces. Now, a while ago, I said that was our last D. We did need another D, so I've changed it on my pattern. We should have 7 Ds, and so I cut me another one. So I've got all of the pieces that I need for this. And what we're going to do is just lay it out. So we have our H. Get our picture back up here. We have our H here. We have our D here. And we have our LL here. This CC is going to be a corner block right up here. So we're going to snowball the corner at the top of H. So I can sew these two right here together, and then I can just take a ruler here, a straight edge, and do a diagonal line right there. So what I'm going to do is go to my sewing machine, sew on this line, and sew these two pieces together, right sides together, just like that. Okay, be right back. All right, so I've got the back end trimmed off on that, and I've got these sewn together, and now all we need to do is line these two up, and we are going to sew these together. Now on this one, these are going to meet, even though this seam goes down. This one right here is a diagonal seam, and so it's the same thing that we did a while ago. Go about 1/4 inch down, poke a pin right there on the seam, and if it comes out right, you're in good shape, and mine does. It's only a short distance, so you probably have it pretty correct on your block. So 1/4 inch away from that edge. And that one is sewn together, and let's see how it matches up. Perfect. So we are going to, let me scoot that up for you. So we are going to be sewing these two pieces together. And the only place that we're going to have an intersection is right here, and it's going to intersect right there. So let's just go ahead and pin both corners first. And then over here. And then mine's a little bit loose on the side where the coat is, and that's fine. I'm just going to first go over here and match this up. I'm going to take a pin, go 1/4 inch down, and see if that's right there where they meet. And that's perfect. It hits that seam right there. Okay, so I'll just leave a pin there, and then I'm just going to distribute this fabric evenly there and put a pin just to keep it together at the edges. And then I'll sew all the way across, and I'll keep this in toward my feed dogs. And there we have it, and you can see where mine meet right there. Not perfect, but no one is ever going to notice it. It is just perfect for me. Okay, so let's go ahead and add the tree to this as well. So let's see if we match. Do pretty good there. So we're going to do right sides together. And let's see, do we have any matching seams? The only place, again, it looks like is, well, we're going to have right there, N and M are going to meet. And then right there at the point like we had over here. So let's go ahead and get both ends pinned together. And then let's see, we should be able to see where these meet. Yep, this one right here, you can just pretty much tell. Let me find my other one here. Looks like this one is meeting here. And you know what? If they don't meet, it doesn't really matter. I don't think that one matters at all if it meets there or not. It is just her dress matching up to the tree. So if the seams don't meet, don't worry about it. And mine are both, of course, folded the wrong way. Let's see if I can... Yeah, I'm going to have to fold that one this way. There we go. I'll use the iron before I sew it. And let's see, is there anything else? Nope. So let's just do this diagonal over here. So here is, where does it meet? Gosh, it just meets right there, doesn't it? And I think those two are just straight. Yeah, those are just a straight seam right there. So I can meet those two, and my seams are going the right direction. Again, if yours are not meeting, do not worry about it. Now I'm wondering on this one. I don't think I'm even going to bother matching up that seam. I'd rather have this all flat. I'm going to live on the wild side here. It's not like it's a star block or something where your points have to meet. All of this fabric is the same. It's just piece, so it doesn't matter where that seam is. So I think we're good, and I am going to stitch 1/4 inch away. And there it is. And see, here's what I was talking about right here. These seams, let's see, right here. This seam right here should have met with this seam. Mine was a little off, and this is so busy here. We've got so many seams here that it can easily get off. It's okay because that's a tree over there and it's not matching with anything, and this is just background fabric. So it doesn't matter if they match or not. Don't worry about it. I just made it so that it fit. Okay, so we have those two or those 3 blocks put together. Okay, now we can add the body part here. And let's see, we might not have, oh, we do have, we have a place. These are going to meet, these 2 seams are going to meet, and again, we have diagonal lines, so it doesn't look like they're meeting right now, but they will once we have that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then there's no seams here, so there's not going to be anything that meets there. Now, it does show that the tree meets up with this one, and if that works, and I think it will, yeah, we'll meet that up too. So let's go over here. Let's first of all meet our corners. And let's pin those in place. And remember, if you have one side that's looser, that's going to go to your feed dogs. And then we're going to find, I'll just match this tree right here. And my seam allowances are going opposite directions, so it does nest. And then let's find right here. So I'm going to go 1/4 inch down. Bring you in a little bit. I am going to go 1/4 inch down right here. Poke it through, and let's see where we're at. Oh, that looks good. Keep that one. Then we're going to go over here to this diagonal seam, get a pin, go 1/4 inch down, and I think there we go. Looks like it's a little off. My fabric's a little off here. Let me pull this down. There we go. So 1/4 inch is probably right about there. And there we have it, right on the money. Okay, so let's just put that one down, and then I'll just put one in the middle. Just kind of distribute that fabric both directions and pin it. So I'll put the loose side, which is this back side here, toward my feed dogs, and I'm going to sew 1/4 inch away. And it looks like we have a good point there, and we have a good point there. Very good. So let me bring you back up a little bit. Now we need to add, and I'll be pressing this, and I think I'll probably press, oh, this might go down. I think I'll press it open because of this tree here. It's quite busy. So let's go up here and grab the head, and this is going to fit nicely too. So now on this right here, the only thing that we need to match on this is we need to match these V's right here, or these stitches to this stitch, and that's going to match 1/4 inch away. Now, I don't think it's necessary that they match perfectly, because when I was sewing, here is my first block that I made. And as you can see, the first diagonal lines are in just a tiny bit, but I think that looks good. It looks like that's her chest below her neck. So if it doesn't match up perfectly, it's okay. I actually kind of like it that way better. I don't know how I made the mistake, so I can't replicate it, but we'll just see what happens when we try making it correctly on this one. So I'm going to put right sides together, again, both ends. Be sure they're matching. And then here is where we need to meet. So again, we have our diagonal lines, and then the lines underneath there are diagonal as well. So I'm just going to get a pin here. And oops, that's a bent pin. We don't want that one. Here's one. And I am going to go 1/4 inch down, and that looks like it's about right there. And that goes a little lower. Let's try this one. Maybe it will happen automatically. 1/4 inch down. That one's right on the money. Nope. That will be good enough, I think. Right there. Yeah. And there's that one. Now I'm just going to go and sew 1/4 inch away from this edge. And let's press that open, and let's see here. The one that was a little harder to get, I got perfect. And that one's just a tiny bit off. I'm not going to rip that off for that, so I am leaving that just like that. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to go and I'm going to press all or both of these seams open, and then we're going to start making our sawtooth star. And there she is. Isn't she looking beautiful? I just love her. Just love her. And you know, right now we are in the middle of a snowstorm, and we have probably got about 7 or 8 inches on the ground right now, and I'll show you a picture of it coming down. But a pretty nice little snow for today. So far it's not been bad. They are talking about maybe changing to a little bit of rain, and I don't think we want that, but we'll see what happens. So I am going to get the fabric for the star. We need, and I just put it all together. We need the Y's, the YY's, the ZZ's, the WW's, and the XX's. Okay, here are all of my pieces for my sawtooth star. Now we are going to be making the sawtooth star using flying geese, and that means we're going to do the 4 at a time flying geese, and that makes it a lot easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our YY block, it's a large block, and we're going to take the ZZs, And on the ZZs, we are going to do our diagonal lines. And we're going to put the diagonal lines on the back. So let's just do all 4 of those at once. Okay, so now we have our lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a ZZ and put it in this corner here, and we're going to put a ZZ right here. And what we want to do is we want to match the edges of these corners, and also we want to match that line going down the middle. Now if you wanted to, you could put the line now, but I like to put the line when I'm doing my squares, because that way I know that I've got them even. And so I've got it lined up nicely right there. So I am just going to put pins over here at the side so that I won't move it. And they won't be in the way when I'm sewing. Now I have made this so it's a little bit oversized, and we're going to trim it down so we've got a little wiggle room. Okay, so I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I am going to sew 1/4 inch away from both sides of this line. Okay, I have that sewn on both sides. Now I can just take a pair of scissors and we can cut right on that line. And then I can press back these corners here. And I'm going to do that real quickly. I'm just going to press those so that we don't have any pleats in those hems. So now we have that. So I'm going to set both of them going, the background fabric going down. They look kind of like hearts now. And I'm going to put this square right here, and the line should be going up through the points of this heart. And I am just going to make sure I've got it leveled or even on these edges here, and pin it in the corners where it will be out of the way when I sew it. And I'll do the same thing for this one up here. That line should go right between those two. Okay, I'm going to go to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew 1/4 inch away from each side. You'll notice that you're going to be going right into that peak, or that indention, I guess. That's really not the peak, it's the valley. Right there into that valley when you hit that 1/4 inch. So I'm going to do that, and I'll bring you right back. And we have them both sewn. Now we'll just cut on that line. There's some seams right there. Don't want to cut myself. Gets a little thick right in here. There we go. Then when we open it, we are going to see that we have a flying geese block, but it's not cut to the size we need. So we need to trim these to size, and I need to write that into the pattern. I will put that in the pattern. I forgot about that. So when you see this pattern down here below the sawtooth stars, I'm going to tell you what size you need to have your flying geese. And let's see, it's going to be, let's see, so WW is 1.5, so this is going to finish up at 1 inch square. So this is going to be 2.5 by 1.5, it looks like. And I'll check that. I'll check that in just a second. So let me press these, and then I'll give you the exact measurement of our flying geese. Okay, so I've pressed these, and we are going to trim them to 1.5 by 2.5, and I'll add that to the pattern underneath the block measurements right here. So I've just pulled out a selection of rulers, because in order to trim down a flying geese block, there are a couple of different methods, and if you have a specialty ruler, it works really nicely. And the specialty ruler that I use is the wing clipper, and it's by Studio 180. I'll put a couple of links in the description box below if you're interested in it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use this ruler to trim this down to 1.5 by 2.5. So I need to put this right here, this angle right there on the point of my goose of my block. And here is where the seams meet down here at that corner. This corner here at the 1.5, here's where the seams meet here. I know that that is now in good shape to trim these outside edges. So I'll just cut those two right there. And then I'm going to flip my flying geese block over. Now I know these two edges are cut to the right size. Now I need to cut the top and the right side to the right size. And I just lay it so my lines right there are right on top of that square, that goose part of my flying geese block. And I'm going to trim there and there. And so that one is really easy, and we have a perfect 1.5 by 2.5 inch flying geese block. Okay, another way to cut and trim a flying goose or flying geese block is using just a regular square ruler that has the diagonal line on it. And what I do is I line that diagonal line up with that seam. I've got my goose block or the goose portion facing down, pointing down. And I line up that spot right there, that line with my seam. Now I'm going to slide it down, and since I know that I have to have a 2.5 inch wide flying geese block, I divide 2.5 by 2 because that's going to be my center point. And 2.5 divided by 2 is 1.25 inches. So here is 1.25 right here. And that line, I need to make sure it is right there at that point. So there's 1.25, and it actually does a nice job of marking it right there, and it's on this line. So at that point, I can trim off this right here and this at the top, okay? Now I'm going to turn this around, and now I'm going to match this with 2.5. So this edge is 2.5. I'm going to pull it down until I have 1/4 inch above that point. So my 1/4 inch line is right there on that point. 2.5 is over here, and if you've cut right while ago, 1.5 is right here. So that looks good. It looks like my point is coming right to the edge of my ruler, exactly what I want. And so then I can trim that down like that. And so that's fine, and you can do that real easily with a regular square ruler. Now, if you have a rectangular one like this one, this is by Rachel Cross of Creative Grids, and this one can be used for lots of different things. It's got a lot of diagonal lines and stuff, but I think it's a good one for doing the flying geese blocks. So what I can do is I can just take this and I can put that line right there. There's 2 lines right there, and I can put that right on the seams of my block. And at the top there, they're leaving 1/4 inch seam. So when I do that and I match those lines on my seams, I'm going to have 1/4 inch above my point. So let me go ahead and trim that. There we go. Now if I flip it over and I lift this up, I know that this has to be 1.5 inches. So I can go ahead and trim this right here at 1.5. And so there is my 1.5 line right there. And I can go ahead and take the top off. Okay, now we have a 1.5 inch thick block. We need it to be 2.5 inches now. And if we're right, 2.5 inches is going to be right where those points are. So let's just see if that's 2.5 inches. And that is right on, 2.5 inches. So I can, actually that one's not the right line here. Let's do this upside down. Well, we can do it this way, 2.5 inches. So I can take this line here, this white line. Oh, I guess it is a 45-degree angle. Yes, it is. So I can take that white line and go on it too. And that looks good. And this point is right here, and this point is right at the 2.5-inch line. So I can go ahead and trim here. And then, that's still good, isn't it? Yeah. I can flip this over, and I can trim this other side by measuring this at 2.5 and 1.5, and that point should be right at the corner where my ruler comes off to the fabric, and it is. So I can trim right there. So there's 3 ways that you can do the flying geese trimming up, and again, I prefer the wing clipper because it requires no math, but any of those will work. So if you don't have a specific ruler for flying geese, you can use any of your square rulers. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'll go ahead and get that other one done, and I'll bring you right back. Okay, now that we have our flying geese blocks, it's going to be real easy to put this together. XX is our center. WWs are the corners. And then in those spaces, we will put our our flying geese blocks, and they should fit just nicely right there, and they do. So what we're going to do is we are going to sew these in rows. I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew these 3 blocks together, then these 3 blocks together, and then these 3 blocks together, and I'll be right back. And we have all of our blocks or our piece strips pieced together. Now I did end up pressing toward the background fabric and then in right here. That way these seams are going to nest really nicely. Now you want to watch, if you want to keep your points when you're sewing, make sure you stay above that point right there, or just a tiny bit of on it. You don't want to get really right on it. Give a little, like a thread's distance away if you want to see that point. And so once you have those 3 pieces, now we are ready to put these together like so, and so a 1/4 inch away. And be sure you pin because you want to match those points. And there we have our sawtooth star block. Isn't that cute? So now let's go ahead and add that final piece, but let's add the fabric that goes around this one. We need, it looks like there's a tiny piece here, and we need B. And they're going to go like this. So I'm just going to sew them with right sides together, 1/4 inch away from both the edges, just like that. And I'll bring you back. And we have this piece done. So now let's add it and do our final seam on our Mrs. Claus block. It's so exciting. I hope that you are able to make this block. It is a fun block to make. It's got a lot of pieces, and it does take a bit to cut out, but if you're organized with your pieces, it goes together really quickly. So I'm matching the ends, and it does match these seams right here, so we can match that. It looks like we've got them going the right direction. And I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch away from the edge. And there we have her, all pieced together, looking so, so pretty. I just love her. I just absolutely love her. I can't wait to get the Christmas stockings made out of these blocks. I think they're going to be beautiful. So what we're going to do now, we still need to finish her face. Now, if I bring over my first block, let me just show you what I have here. I have used the same method that Tilda used on her Santa. We just took a circle. I used a circle for hers. Santa had an oval, and it was just turned under and stitched around, applique stitched around. And this one just about drove me nuts. And the reason really was because this was using the yarn dyed fabric. This is the Essex linen that I'm using on the one that I'm doing for my stocking. This one here, it's the Essex linen flax. It's not the yarn dyed. This is the yarn dyed here. And this is a little rougher. But the Essex linen is a coarser, looser grained fabric. And so it unravels really easily when you're turning it under and stuff. And so with this fabric, it is a bit harder. I am going to show you how to make it, and I'm going to use this fabric, and we're going to see how it's done. Now, I know that a lot of people in the comments commented that, Lori Holt method works. Well, when I was making this one, I tried the Lori Holt method, but it was when I was making this one, when I was making Santa Claus, I tried the Lori Holt method, but with this Essex linen, it was just too heavy duty and thick, and it just wouldn't turn under correctly. But if you're using regular fabric, a regular cotton fabric, yours might work differently. And if you're good at it, you might be able to get it to work. I have not used that method, and it seemed like I could not get it to lay flat. So this one is too small for that. So I'm going to show you how I do it. The other parts, I'm just going to use French knots, and then I have a little, like a daisy stitch that I do twice for the mouth on her mouth. So let me grab a little piece of fabric, and I'll bring you right back. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use the lid of this Sharpie pen, and I'm going to put it down right here. And I'm going to use my Sharpie, and you can use on this right here some freezer paper. I don't have any, so this is actually the paper that my printable labels comes on, and it's kind of a waxy coating on both sides. So there is my template, okay? And so I'm just going to cut out, and I'm going to cut on the inside of that black line. Now, you can do a satin stitch for a nose. You can do raw edge applique for the nose. You can, let's see, is there anything else that you can do? You can go noseless, but since my Santa has the nose that's the fabric like the one that I'm making right now, I'm going to have to match it with him. So that's what we're going to do. So then I'm going to take a piece of fabric, and I'm going to try it with the starch fabric first. And if that doesn't work, I'll try it without starch fabric. And I am going to just set that on my fabric, and I am going to take a nice 1/4 inch cut all the way around the edge and just eyeballing it. And if you need to put like a little glue or something on there to keep it situated, or with yours, with the freezer paper, you can just iron it down and it will stay on because there's kind of a waxy substance on it. Okay, now once I have that, and I can bring you down a little bit. Okay, now once I have that, now I am going to, I think I will put just a little bit of glue on that. Now I don't want to use very much of this glue, so I'm going to put just a little on my finger, put it on the paper, and then set it on there, okay? And that'll dry in just a second. While that's drying, I'm going to really carefully take my scissors and I am going to draw or cut little snips all the way around. Let me get my smaller ones. And go all the way to the paper, but don't cut the paper. Okay. Now, what you need to do is you need to fold all of these little pieces that we have toward the center. Now, I think what I am going to do, I'm just giving them a little crease with my thumb right here, but I kind of think what I'm going to do is I am going to put a little of this glue on it, and that will kind of soften it up a little bit, and then it will help it stick. So let me do that. I'm just kind of going around and creasing it. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is, and this glue comes out really slow, just put a little glue around the outside edge there, and I'm trying not to get the glue on the front part, okay? Because it probably will change the appearance. It will probably give it a little bit of a luster and maybe even darken it. So just let that. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to start pushing these toward the middle. Now, if you are using parchment paper, that parchment paper has something on it, kind of a waxy substance, that when you iron it, it will stick to the clothing temporarily, or the fabric temporarily. So that works really well. Okay, now what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to give this a press. Okay, there's where I'm at so far. Now it's still flexible and I can pull out that paper, but I'm going to have to go back and repair it, or I can leave the paper in. Now, if this were something that I was washing, I don't think I would leave the paper in. I think the paper would not be a very good thing to have inside there. But it's going to be a stocking, so I am debating on it. I'm going to go ahead, because I know I can figure this out. I'm going to go ahead and try pulling it out and see what we get. So, grab hold of it, pull it out, okay, and then push it back together. Okay. Now, if, like I said, if you have the freezer paper, it's going to be a lot easier. I just don't have, I have some, but I don't know where it's at. And then I'm just going to kind of push those corners or those little points, and with my iron, I'll fix it. So there is my nose. This one's just a little bit bigger than my other one, but I think it's okay. The Santa nose is really big too, and it just kind of makes them look more old world maybe. So let me give this a press and we'll see what we got. Okay, here we have it. Right, whoops, right there. Okay, so there's her nose. And put it where you think would look the best. I kind of thought that just a little higher than center of this piece right here looked pretty good. Okay, so I have a needle and thread, and the needle has one thread on it, and I've just knotted at the end of the one thread, and then the other one is loose. You could do it with double threads, but it's such a small nose that I want to keep it from showing up too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the back of my block here, and I am going to come up somewhere underneath where that nose is going to be. Let's just come up right there. Okay. Then I'm going to put my nose where I want it to be. I think right there. And so what I'm going to do, if I can do this with the camera here, bring this down. I am going to do kind of a stitch, and there's a name for it, but I'm not sure exactly what it's called. I am going to take a little tiny bite out of my nose fabric right there. Just really tiny, right up next to the edge. And I am going to start going around. So right next to where I took that bite, I am going to go into the fabric, the background back there. And I can either go down and pull my thread out, or I can come back up, and that way I don't have to worry about that. So let me get my hand around here. Let me bring it up a little bit. And so what I'm going to do, again, try to keep that nose where you want it. I am going to try to keep my thread from coming undone. There we go. Go right next to, here is where my thread comes up out of the nose right here. I'm going to go right down next to it, just a little underneath too, and then travel underneath and then come up and take a little bite out of the nose right there. Then I'm going to go straight down next to the nose into that background fabric, her face, and I'm just going to do that. Now I'm just doing this one where I'm going without bringing it back up. So if you don't like to do it in one stroke, you can pull it back in the back and do that. And then I'll come back up and take a little nip right there out of the nose, and I'll travel right back almost underneath the nose there so that you don't see that stitch, just right next to it. And you can keep on going around just like that, and that way you're going to have really little stitches and you're not going to see them. Now if you want to do it the way that I usually do it, when you bring your needle up, let's see if I can do this with the fabric turning here. Put your needle back down right underneath the nose, right next to that stitch, and then bring it back up right through where you want to come up on the nose right there. Bring that down, make it tight enough. Change my hand grip here. Then we're going to go over here, make sure it's tight, make sure you can see. Okay, go right next to it and a little underneath the nose. Take a pinch of that nose right there, bring it up, and just keep going. Okay. And once you have all your stitches and you've got your last stitch on, go ahead and go back behind the nose a little bit there and just push your needle through and tighten those stitches. Make sure they're on there nice and tight. Okay, turn it over. And let's see, we can just do a little knot like that there. I'm also going to do another knot underneath the nose, and this is, you can see the nose has the circle around it, and no one's going to see this little piece of thread that I pick up, or fabric that I pick up there. And I'm going to bring it through, and I'm going to do another knot right here, just for good measure. And I'll probably put 2 of them there. Okay, so there we have our nose all done. Let's see, did I not get that tight? That was just a part of that thread there. Okay, and this is the reason why this thread has loose weave. So it's going to, so I'm going to take another stitch out of that nose there. And then I'm going to go in between that thread loop. But this Essex linen is a little looser woven, and so sometimes those little knots can pop through it. Trim off all of those extra strings, threads. And her nose is on, and once we press it, it'll lay nice and flat. Okay, to make her mouth, I'm going to use 4 strands of DMC floss, and I have it threaded like this, and I have my knot at the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out where we want the mouth, and I think right there will be the bottom part of the mouth. I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to do a little loop like this, and I'm going to go back into that hole. And if you don't get it directly in the hole, it's okay. And if you get it on the knot and it starts pulling your thread, there we go. And pull that through so we have just a little loop sticking up. Looks like she's sticking her tongue out at us. Okay, so there's what we have right there, just that little loop. Then I'm going to take my needle and I am going to come up, let me move that out of the way a little bit to the right and above where I came off earlier. And so right there, I want to put that loop, I want to go through that loop too. Now pull gently here. And then you're going to get like a little flower petal right there. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go right back into that hole on the other side of that DMC floss so that you have it anchored. Now we have it anchored, okay? So there's one side. And if you feel that it's too loose, we can tighten it up. Just like that. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to put our needle right through where we started. And we're going to do a loop and then go back into that hole. And then we want to make a needle, or bring our needle up about the same distance to the left and above as the other one. Just try to make them, it's kind of like making a little heart. I can go a little bit further over. And you could put these 3 points on with a erasable marker if you want before you start. Okay, and then we're going to go right back through that hole so we can anchor that loop. Okay, and there we have a little heart. And again, you can fiddle with these threads to make it the way you want it. So now Mrs. Claus has lips. I think I need to tighten that one up and I'll work that one. There we go. So she has her lips. Now we need to get some, let me go ahead and tie this one off. So we can tie it off by just, this thread is so thick that we can just do a knot. So I'll just do a double knot there. Okay. All right, now I need to get some black thread for the eyes. Okay, to make the eyes, you are going to need some DMC black floss, and I've got 6 strands on here, and I have the knot on the end. Now, if you wanted to do 3 strands, you could knot both ends down here, and you'd have 6 that way too. So we are going to need to know where we're going to place those, so I like to mark them a little bit before, and I am thinking maybe right there. And right there, maybe. I think that looks good. So we're going to take our needle and thread and come up from the back and go in like that. Then we're going to go around our needle, holding our needle like this. We're going to go once and twice. And then you can go right next to it. I usually like to have a thread or two of the fabric between it, but you can go through the whole 2. And then as I'm doing this, I've got my hand on this so it doesn't come loose. And usually I don't have it laying on the table like this. And there we have one of our eyes. Now, if you wanted the eye to be bigger, you could do more knots. We can try a 3. Let's see what a 3 looks like, because I can just take it out. I can take out the one that we don't like. So we bring it through. And let's try 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm kind of holding that thread right there so the knot doesn't come loose. I kind of like the 3. I may just stick with the 3. I'll fix that later, but that's how you do a French knot. And so there we have her face, and we can finish it off by tying it, but I won't tie it since I'm going to take one of those eyes off. I think I'll take this one off and redo it with 3 twirls. So I'll stick my needle right here. So we could finish this off just like that. It needs a good press now. And let me give it a press and fix this eye, and I'll bring you back. And there she is. I think she turned out really, really good. I really like her. I think she's going to go along with Santa just perfectly, and I've got Santa right here. So we're going to add him right here. Now, I do want to tell you that I did not add a piece. Let me bring him down a little bit so you can see. Santa's a little bit taller than her. Now we can add a piece right here, and I'll put the measurement for it in the pattern. It's probably, I think, like 1 inch by 10.5 or something like that, but I'll have that in the directions. I'm leaving it off of mine because I'm turning this into a stocking, and I think I may be trimming this one, but it may be that I'll end up putting this back on. I'm not sure. But right now I've got it off because I think this is the size that I need for a stocking. So here's what we have right there. And if I want to bring my tree over, we can do this right here, just like that. Or we can do the tree over here. It can go anywhere. Or we could have the tree in between them. But if you're wanting to do a table topper or a wall hanging with it, you can decide how you want to do it. But I think it turned out really cute, and I'm really excited to share this block with you, and I hope you get a chance to make it too. If you do make Mrs. Claus, I'd love to see it, and you can share it with me on Instagram. Just take your picture and post it and tag Blue Rooster at Blue Rooster 23, and that will share it with me, and people can come and see that at my site. So that would be really fun to see all of your Mrs. Claus blocks and how you made them. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a long one, but these blocks are major blocks and they do take a bit of time, and there's no way really that I felt like I could divide it into 2 different videos. So I really appreciate you watching. I hope that you had a very nice Thanksgiving. I hope your weather is good where you're at. It looks like it's quit snowing here right now. I don't know what it's supposed to be doing this evening, but right now we've kind of got it nice and calm out there, just lots of snow. But we like snow, so we'll enjoy it. So if you enjoyed this video and you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing. That would help my channel out a lot. Also, don't forget to like and share and comment, because comments help my channel's algorithms so that they show this video to more people. Thanks again, and I hope to see you back here next time. Bye-bye.